here, we can start. Okay. Anyway, I just want to make one little announcement. We have one of our groups, our women's CODA group, will be joining us on August the 11th, and they'll be hybrid. Okay, but the people that are in that group know more about that. A lot of our groups are beginning to come back now, and a lot of them are doing them hybrid. So it's kind of a lot of it's different, but it's good. Okay, I'm going to begin tonight by doing a reading from The Language of Letting Go, the Codependency Meditation book. And I picked the one from June 5th, which is on shame. Watch out for shame. Many systems and people reek of shame. They are controlled by shame and may want us to play their game with them. They'll be hoping to hook us and control us through shame. We don't have to fall into their shame. Instead, we'll take the good feelings, self-acceptance, love, and nurturing. Our past and the brainwashing we may have had that imposed the notion of original shame upon us, they try to put shame on us. This can happen when we're all alone, walking through the grocery store, or just quietly going about living our life. Be done with shame, attack it, go to war with it, learn to recognize it and avoid it like the plague. Never deliberately refuse to get caught up in the shame floating around in the world. If I cannot resist it, I can feel it, accept it, and be done with it as quickly as possible. God, help me know that it's okay to love myself. Help me refuse to submit to shame. If I get off course, help me to be able to correct the behavior and move forward with my life and immediate self-love. I wanted to read that because tonight what I'd like to do with this little 3-week series we'll be doing on shame. It's one of my favorite series. I want to talk tonight about something called the masks of shame, the different masks of shame. Whether you realize it or not, shame is the core, the center, almost everything that goes on in the course of our life that's negative. And I'll bring that out as I talk about shame tonight. I also want to be able to show you something with connected with that. And one of the things I find very powerful in dealing with shame is something called the iceberg theory. The iceberg theory comes from one of my eating disorder books. It's pretty powerful. And what it does is it gives you a whole concept of the iceberg. And inside the iceberg are all the different elements of shame, all the masks that we play that are connected to us in our life. On the top of the iceberg are all the different addictions or the behaviors that we do to avoid having to melt the iceberg and deal with it. And so I really recommend getting a copy of that under Vince's Corner. Like I already said, it's on the year 2021. It's the second bullet. You can get a copy from there. But I wanted tonight to talk about different elements of shame, where it comes from and why I refer to it as having so many different masks, so many different images. In growing up as children, we have what we call original shame. Original shame comes basically from our foundations, from our childhood. It comes from the roots and foundations, as we said and talked about in codependency. We have an example of the concept of original shame. When I was a child, my mother had me cesarean birth, and she almost died on the operating table. As we know, cesarean birth was a lot more serious back then, plus she was almost 40 years old in 1940. As a result, my aunts used to use something all the time because I see shame as issues of control, guilt, fear. These are the main issues of shame. My aunts used to say to me all the time, you almost killed your mother once. You better be good because you might kill her again. You know, it's amazing sometimes some of the things that we do. And people don't do it because they're trying to be nasty or something. They use this concept of shame, this concept of guilt and fear to try to keep us in a sense of control, to be able to control the situations. And back in the past, in my generation anyway, it was used as discipline. Shame was used as a way to keep people quiet, keep your mouth shut, And many of our voices were taken away from us as children. As a result, then we picked up different patterns and things that became normal in our life. And as a result, then, even though the shame, the original shame, and the messages that we got, we should be able to outgrow them. But guess what? You don't. They'll come up at different times in different places, and they'll come up in different areas. They'll come up physically in your body, physical shame, because so many times many of us were called names or given nicknames or things of that effect. And as a result, then physically, we looked at ourselves negatively. And as a result, I can still remember, as a child, because I was a little bit on the heavy side. And I remember my breasts were always a little bit bigger than everybody else's. And so as a result, the kids used to play a lot of games with me and create a lot of shame, a lot of abuse, a lot of stuff that went on. And as a result, because of the shame, I went into isolation. And so we look at the aspects of shame from childhood, there's a lot of messages. And the messages came across in very many different ways. And those messages then will affect us and touch us in different areas of our life. There's also something called learned shame. Shame that is put on us over the course of our growth, messages we get from other people. And many of those learned shame messages also activate our original shame messages. And so as a result, we experience this in many different areas of our life. As a result, fear, control, guilt. I joked about this back in the beginning of my talks a lot of times. I said at the moment of my birth, because I guess because I'm Italian, but I'm sure it's other generations too, I was given a PhD in fear, guilt, and worry. In short, I was given a PhD in the aspect of shame. And shame has a lot of faces, so many different faces, and you'll see what they are. For example, expectations, form of shame. Perfectionism, a form of shame. Getting caught up in another mess, self-pity, feeling sorry for myself. Self-hatred, they're all forms of areas of shame. John Bradshaw wrote a wonderful book called Healing the Shame That Binds You. I had the wonderful opportunity to go to 2 of his workshops quite a number of years ago. And the one thing he said over and over again, he said, don't look at shame negatively. He used to say, shame is part of life. Shame is part of the process of life. But he says you have to be able to embrace it, accept it, be able then to reduce it, and be able to get it down to a manageable level so that you can learn and grow from it. I'll never forget that when he used to say that all the time in his workshops. He used to say, don't beat yourself up, don't be hard on yourself. Because he said over and over again, the hardest enemy that we have is ourselves. It's the image we have of ourselves, the way in which we pick up stuff. It's almost like we're like a sponge. We pick up all these different elements of different areas of shame. And as a result, then we have a tendency to keep thinking that somehow, some way, we can somehow control it. I'm going to tell you right now, we have to learn the beautiful concept of being able to accept and be able to learn from the things of shame. Take, for example, perfectionism, one of the elements of shame. So many people try to live their life perfectly. They try to have everything work the way they want it to work. Last time I checked, I think all of us are human beings. So the bottom line is, we have imperfections, we make mistakes, we screw up every once in a while. Congratulations. But instead of beating ourselves up, we have to try to look at these things with positive eyes. Because perfectionism is death as far as I'm concerned. I get a kick out of when I was a priest. I did a lot of funerals. And people come up to the casket and they say, doesn't he look great? He never looked that good when he was alive. I used to love all that craziness. And yet I understand their grieving process. But really, in reality, what they're really saying is we have a tendency to think that somehow, some way, we're going to live this perfect life. If only I had more money, there's a shame-based message. If only I was prettier. If only I was handsomer. If only I was this. If only I was that. All those if onlys are another shame-based messages. And the crazy part about it is we keep thinking the grass is greener on the other side. You get to the other side and you find out the grass there has brown spots in it, has weeds in it, has stuff in it. Congratulations, isn't it wonderful? I've said this so many times. We all got stuff. Congratulations, isn't it wonderful? Instead of beating yourself up, embrace your stuff. Embrace your personhood. And I've learned over and over again that so many things in life, I got to stop being hard on me. It's amazing in my own journey, in my own life. For 44 years, I lived inside this iceberg. That's why this iceberg means so much to me. I was that iceberg for 44 years. Outside, I functioned. I went through rituals. So basically, I was able to function on an external plane. But I had tons and tons and tons of internal shame, guilt, fear. All these things were flying inside of me. And as a result, then I literally buried it, kept it secret, kept it on the inside. And they tell you in the program over and over again, we're as sick as our secrets. The hardest thing in life is to be able to melt that iceberg. But you can melt it slowly and gradually. If you begin to look at yourself and work on yourself and begin to see the spiritual journey that we're on. The other element of shame many times is emotional shame. We're so hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up, and literally our emotions. And some of us even don't give ourselves permission to have our feelings. Believe it or not, feelings are the most beautiful thing on the face of the earth. And you're going to have hurt feelings. You're going to go through changes. There's some days you'll feel good. Some days you'll want to run away. All those things are normal. But the bottom line is we have to learn the concept of not being so hard on ourselves. Remember, your feelings are all legitimate. There's no such thing as a bad feeling. Feelings fundamentally are part of our journey. And on some days, you're going to feel lousy, and some days you'll feel great. The secret of life is to have a little bit of each. It's called balance. It's the concept of things that we do. And yet, so many times in the course of ourselves, we get caught up in that concept of self-pity, self-hatred, being hard on ourselves. And the easiest thing to do is to hide inside. It's interesting in life how God works in some very special ways to wake us up, to get us out of it. I never realized in my own journey, in my own life, until I really started doing my work, my step work and stuff to that effect back in 86 and 87. And I began to peel the onion, to get in touch with the stuff that was going on inside of me. And I'm going to be honest with you. The hardest thing I ever had to do was to put down my addictions. Once I was able to arrest them, you know why I didn't like arresting them? Because then all those feelings, all those memories, all that stuff start coming up. And I immediately wanted to go back to my old behaviors. But I know now, a little bit at a time, you got to be able to make change. You got to be able to face and deal with things. It's really interesting. I'm doing my steps again now with a new sponsor. I'm doing my steps again. I think this is the 4th time through them. And it's interesting how I really thought I worked through so much stuff. And yet, it's amazing as you go a little bit deeper, the new things that are coming up. I was able to share with my sponsor some things that I never realized were deep. They were deep down there for a long period of time. And it's interesting as they begin to open up, you begin to get them out. You begin to realize they're not as bad as they are when they're on the inside. I realize this today, that the more I hold stuff in, the sicker it gets. It's like being emotionally constipated. It hurts after a while. And sooner or later, you got to be able to take that physic, an emotional physic. In the program, we call that the 4th and 5th, 6th and 7th, 8th and 9th steps. I call that the emotional physic, to be able to clean stuff out. But you got to do a little bit at a time when you're ready to do it. A little bit of time, things bring to surface. And when you get done, people always say this to me. You'll get done. Now, if you're a good codependent, 50 years after you're dead, that's all. You just have to work on it for another 50 years. If you're not a real good codependent, maybe 70 years. But the bottom line is, the journey of life is just a journey. And we can look at it negatively, we can look at it positively. We all have our issues. And sometimes those issues come out sideways. One of the biggest ones is anger, frustration. All these things come up to play. They're all issues of shame. When I'm in my own self-hatred thing, I want to dump it out on everybody else. As a result, then you get caught up in playing what I call the blame game. I got to blame somebody for what's going on because I don't want to look at my stuff, please, whatever. And I did that in the priesthood. I remember I blamed the church. I blamed my parents. I blamed my family. I blamed this one. I blamed that one. And my therapist used to say, when you get tired of blaming people, he said, how about if we go over and look in the mirror? And he used my language. He says, look at your own crap. He used other words. But he said, look at your own crap. He says, guess what? It stinks. Deal with it. And I love that guy. God rest his soul. But the beautiful thing about it was, I never realized I needed that emotional physic. I needed to clean. And I'm not done. I know there's probably a lot more down there I got to still work on and get in touch with. And that's okay. It's how it's supposed to be. So maybe we just, instead of having a moving van of stuff, maybe now I only got a suitcase. We'll see what happens with it as we continue the journey. But that's the good part about life. And as you go on the journey of life, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to fall. The secret is get back up. My father used to say this to me all the time. He says, never be afraid to fall down. Then you will learn how to get up. These are wisdom words of people that were on the journey and went through a lot. We have to learn things like this in the course of our journey. Then there's spiritual shame. Many of us in growing up picked up different concepts of belief systems. We never had a negative concept of ourselves as a person. Never even understood what spiritual meant. To me as a kid, and also my years in the seminary, younger years in the priesthood, spirituality meant religion to me. And I grew up in the 40s, and I had some real interesting people who scared the hell out of me, and put the fear of God in me. And literally, basically, I looked at God very negatively. And the other part of it is, too, when it comes to expectations, they expected things from you couldn't produce. For example, I was always a C student. I'm not the greatest thing at all when it comes to school. Loretta will tell you that because I need her to figure half this stuff out. But the bottom line is, I'm good at being able to absorb stuff, but really to get into schooling, I did what I had to do. I got through it. I got my C's because I was a C student. I thank God to this day that my father accepted me for that. He never really pushed me. Yet what do we do with kids a lot of times? We push them, we drive them. You got to do this, you got to believe this, you got to do that, you got to go here, you got to go there. We don't allow people to have a sense of who they are, a sense of their own person. Even when it comes to a belief system, how many times have people said, if you don't believe what I believe, then you're wrong. When everybody tells me that I have to believe what they believe, it means they don't believe it. Each one of us is unique. Each one of us has our own belief systems. We have our own connection to our belief systems. It's part of who we are as people. We've got to be open to that, to learn and grow. That can change tomorrow. That's the beautiful part about it. But also we can be open to other areas, other directions in life, and not get caught up in negative concepts of self. I never truly understood spirituality, the gift of spirituality and what it means until I got into recovery and I learned. It's about me getting to know who I am, building my own spirit, getting in touch with me. And my spirit is unique, and so is yours. Each one of us is unique. Each one of us is one of God's creations. And each one of us is special. Doesn't make any difference what size, what shape, what color, where you come from, what background you have. We're all interconnected. We're all part of one another, part of a growth process. But even there, we get caught up in shame. Judgments are shame, judging people. One of the biggest things in life we have to learn is how to work through even traumas that we've gone through. One of the saddest stories I ever dealt with in my life is a gentleman from Philadelphia. I worked with him for 4 years. It was this really sad situation. He was sexually abused by his mother and by a clergyman. And he spent most of his life being so angry at them. He spent years in therapy, but never was able to work past the anger. He literally kept blaming them for everything. His life was miserable because of them. And even after they died, they weren't around anymore. He still wanted them to basically tell him he's right, that he's right. He kept giving him more power until he was 83 years old and he died from congestive heart failure. He drove his life right into the ground. Shame. Shame can do a number on you, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and even socially, in all different areas of our life. It can do a number on you. So we have to learn what we refer to as external shame and internal shame. External shame is a lot of times we put on other people too. You can put shame on somebody else not even knowing you did it by saying something and you're touching something inside of them. You know, different people, don't they activate feelings in you sometimes? You meet somebody and basically you say, I don't like that person. You never talked to them, you never really met them. You just kind of ran into them and all of a sudden you don't like them. Well, why don't you like them? Well, maybe it's because they're activating something inside of you. You have to stop and look at that. You know, it's the same thing when it comes to relationships. We're all different in relationships. We're opposites in very many different ways. That's okay too. It's good. You don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who's exactly like you, especially if they look just like you, then you're really in trouble. But the bottom line is, you have to realize the importance of just being open to other individuals. We learn from our partners. We learn from people around us. We learn from people we meet in the course of our journey. As I've said so many times when I talk about relationships, you have so many different types of relationships in life. And they're all to help us grow, to become more powerful, to be connected, to be healthy. And yet I realize over and over again that shame can be so crippling. Like John Bradshaw said, it binds you. It holds you on the inside. We have to learn how to finally begin to release it, to get in touch with it, to begin to feel it. And one of the things can really do is being negative. You ever been around somebody who's totally negative and you actually feel shame oozing off of them? We had a good gentleman I knew in South Philadelphia. And we used to have a nickname for him, which I won't say because somebody might recognize it. But basically, every time you met him, you say, it's a beautiful day. Well, it's probably going to rain. It'll be a matter of time. Everything was negative, 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 negative. And all you wanted to do was get away from him because the roof is going to fall. Everything's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Another catastrophe. And everything in life was about that. And when you're around somebody like that, after a while, you start feeling negative. It rubs off on you. But what he's doing is he's portraying feelings about himself onto you. Don't try not to accept them. Detach, move away from it. Otherwise, what happens is you fall right into the trap. It becomes crazy, it becomes insane. That's why it's so important just to be able to celebrate who we are, to look into that mirror and love that person in the mirror, celebrate that person in the mirror, and realize the fact that person in the mirror has imperfections on all three levels. Thank God that we do, because then we're never done. Isn't that great? We're in process all the time. And as you get older, you get some more imperfections. What the heck, right? You start making more noises in different places. Things begin to happen. Your skin gets smaller, is thinner, and therefore you get more bumps. Like I got lots of them. They're pretty neat. You know, they're signs of aging. And you go to the doctors, of course, you know, and every time you have an ailment, you go to the doctor, he says, it's just a matter of aging, just a matter of aging. You want to smack him too, but that's all right. It's all part of the journey. It's all part of life. So your body changes, your feelings change, things change inside. Nothing stays the same. And that's why you don't want to get to a point where you think you have it all together. You know, remember my diagram. You know, life is supposed to be like this. Hook up to a heart monitor. If it's like this, when you hook yourself up, you got troubles. Real simple and real plain. So the bottom line is, remember something about shame, which is so important. It has many, many, many faces, many masks. And many of us in survival mode have lived those masks. For example, I remember when I used to joke and say, I have my family mask. You know, around them, I function a certain way. I have my outside mask. I have my relationship mask. I have my church mask. All these masks. After a while, you put the wrong one on at the wrong time because you can't figure out what you're doing anymore after a while. I don't want to live with masks. I know one thing today, I have to accept them. These are part of who I am. I realize today, and again, it's only working with a lot of people, working in recovery. It only means working with my therapist, but I realize today, the greatest investment I can make is the investment in my own personal life. To be able to realize, I hope in God, and I pray every day, I'll learn something new every day. I learned something new today from Loretta, but I'm not going to tell her what it is because then I'll give away my secret. But the bottom line is, I'm learning how to laugh. I'm learning how to cry. I'm learning how to have all these things in my life. You know, that's okay. You realize after a while, God, it's so wonderful and so great to be human. But I think what happens a lot of times is we have the other element of shame, which is rigidity. It's got to be my way or the highway. It's got to be a certain way. If it's not, I'm going to get mad, I'm going to get angry, and we're going to get frustrated. We do this a lot in relationships a lot of times. I want you to be what I want you to be. Instead of me saying, hey, I love you just the way you are. I love you on the journey that you're on. And be able to realize the process in it. I thank God every day, you know, that, you know, my wife and I are total opposites. She's very private, and guess what? I'm not. And so the bottom line is we're a good balance for each other. She knows how to tone me down, and I know how to bring her out a little bit. So we're learning a lot from each other. It's the important part of it. But the biggest thing is we have to realize the fact that I don't want her to be me, and I don't want to be her. I want to be me. It's the same thing with everything we do in life. You have children. Your children are all different. Everyone is unique. Isn't it amazing? I have 3 girls. They are totally unique. And thank God that they are. They have different personalities. I'm looking around this room right now. Look at all the different personalities in this room. Oh God, look at different ages. Isn't it amazing? All of us have the beautiful thing is called life. The thing I try to bring out to you is this. Shame is part of the journey. It's part of life. We live in a world that, by the way, is dysfunctional. There's a lot of shame out there in the world. You know, and you get caught up in it. What you got to do is you got about 565 channels on TV now. I don't know how many there are. They're all the same anyway. But I mean, 565 channels, and basically, you have all these bombarded, all these messages, stuff coming at you. Now we got this little machine to run around with. I call it the shame machine a lot of times, running around with it. I got to have it, otherwise something will happen to me. Nothing will happen to you. Just shut it off and go for a walk. Enjoy the sunshine. And yet, we get so caught up in what we do. We get so caught up in performance. We get so caught up in doing it right. You know, some of the greatest teachers I ever had were human. Were human. They were simple. I told you the story so many times of my favorite professor. I'll never forget him to the day I die because he's one of my mentors, one of my teachers in my life. He was a Belgian Jesuit. I studied at La Salle University for my master's degree under him. And he was so unique. It was unbelievable. We live in a very rigid world. He comes from Europe, from Belgium, and basically they look at life a lot differently than we do. The first day of class when he came in, he came in with a t-shirt, a pair of Bermudas and flip-flops. He came in, he said, "Hi." And we were nuns and priests in there, back in those days. And of course, we're ready now to receive all this knowledge. He said, "What do you want to learn today?" Nobody answered him. "What do you mean, what do you want to learn? You're supposed to teach us. What do you want to learn?" Nobody answered him. He said, "Okay, let's go have lunch then." He walked out of the classroom. Went across the street, sitting down, drinking coffee. Everybody ran over and said, "What about the class?" He said, "It's a beautiful day. Enjoy the sunshine. Today's class is enjoy the sunshine. Sit down, relax, have a cup of coffee. Talk to one another, get to know each other, have some fun. That's a good class for today. We'll do something else tomorrow." And he drove us nuts. He did not conform. And yet, you know what? I learned more from that man than I learned from so many people in the course of the courses I took. It was so amazing. He was right. Sit down, enjoy the sunshine, appreciate the day. Some of my greatest teachers taught me simplicity. Some of the old timers in AA at the South Philly Clubhouse, they used to, crazy Italian guys, they used to say to me, "Hey, did you wake up this morning?" I say, "Yeah." "What are you complaining about? You're awake. Do the best you can do for today. Say thank you at night and go to sleep. Don't worry about it. Take a little bit at a time. Slow down, relax." That's why I love this iceberg theory, because I printed it out for you because it taught me so much. Because when I look at this iceberg is me. Well, it's not me now. It was me for a long period of time. I've thought it out a little bit. I'm still working on thawing it out. And I figure I'll get it thought out probably 10, 15 years after I'm dead. We'll see what happens. We're going to keep working on it. But the bottom line is I think I'll have to get a new sponsor when I get over there. No, it's not a problem. But the bottom line is I realize if I don't thaw this out, I'll go right back to my old crazy behaviors, my old crazy ways. I'll keep looking for things to be that can't be. I'll be scared to make a decision, scared to move forward. I spent 10 years in conflict to make a decision I needed to make. And my therapist put it very beautifully, a good therapist. He used to say, "Vince, you got a problem. You have to stop straddling the fence." He said, "Visualize yourself walking on one foot on one side of a picket fence, the other foot on the other side, walk up and down. It's called a bloody, painful journey. You got to make some decisions in life. Will they work? I don't know. Got to make them. You got to try them out, see what happens. But you can't stay in the middle. That's what life's all about. Risks, yeah. Being able to release the shame is powerful. And so what I want to do next week is I want to spend a lot of time on something called shame reduction. The theory behind it is that shame is part of our journey. And many of us, it might be part of our history, part of our background. But the secret is, instead of running from it or trying to get rid of it, can't get rid of your history, I'm sorry. History is your history, congratulations. Embrace it and accept it. Two of the greatest spiritual words I've learned in my lifetime are the words acceptance and adjustment. I consider the two basic spiritual words. I'm learning in life to be able to accept them. The shame in my life is part of me, it's part of my journey. I got to be able to embrace it and reduce it to a manageable level and be able to use it in a positive way to learn and to grow from it. That's all. As life goes on, you're going to experience even more things as you go through life. And the nice part about being 82 years old is, I guess I've gone through a lot of different crazy journeys in my life. I got a history, and I thank God for it every day. And boy, some of the stories I still can't believe, but I read my own book I wrote on the journey of my life. It's only part of the whole journey. I read that, I say, did I really do that? And sometimes you look back and you say, you got through it. You moved to the other side. You kept learning and kept growing. And so learn to be good to yourself, to see the beauty inside of yourself, to see the specialness inside of you. There's an old saying. It says sometimes, wisdom is something that you work into and you grow towards. Wisdom comes from experience. It comes from learning. My meditation book with Native American elders always talks about sit at the feet of your elders, learn from them, experience from them, learn lessons from those who have gone before you. And later on, you become one of the elders. I just found that out. And then you got to be able to, pass it on. It's all part of it. I have a lot of gratitude today, a lot of gratitude for the things I've learned over the years. I thank God I'm able to pass them on. But I realize today I'm not going to be able to pass them on unless I continue the journey and continue doing the work. And whatever you do in life, don't ever be done. If you're done, it means the undertaker's picking you up. Don't do that, please. And some of us don't even know when he picks you up, but it's all right too. The bottom line is, you gotta be able to live life and celebrate life. My therapist said to me one day, when I was bitching, complaining, and carrying on, he said, come with me, Vince. And doing that blame game, he put me in front of a mirror and he said, that's the person you have to look at. That's the one you have to work on. That's the one that is the center of the journey. He scared me. And recovery scared me. And change scares me sometimes. But it's part of it. So whatever you do, remember, we have many masks. Those masks take on a lot of different images. Sometimes I understand there are times you have to wear some of those masks just to get through life. But remember, as long as you know it's a mask, it's not you. I know many times you have to work for a big corporation or someplace, you got to put that corporate mask on, but make sure you don't lose what's underneath of it. And that's here, that's your heart. That's your core, that's your center. That's what it's all about. And that's the important part of it. And I believe that the higher power is constantly trying to teach us through experience, through things in our life, to help us to learn and to help us to grow. And that's what it's really all about. So tonight, as I share with you a prayer, the prayer is that the higher power will guide us and strengthen us in our journey to be close to each other. Let us pray. God, we come before you in prayer. We call upon the God of our understanding, our higher presence, to be a guide, to be a strength, to help us on this journey, the journey on this earth, a journey sometimes of confusion and chaos, and yet a journey of learning, a journey of growing, a journey of new things, a journey of experiences, a journey of life. We come here in gratitude and we thank you for teaching us the importance of being able to walk this journey with people around us. Don't walk it alone, because loneliness also can drive us down. Teach us that we need each other, we need you, and we need each other, and to be part of this journey as we live our life in love, continue to grow as people. So God, thank you for walking with us. Thank you for allowing me to be a partner with you. Teach us that we need each other, we need the journey, we need the learning, and we need the growth. We pray and we ask this every day. We pray it in your name. Amen. And now we're going to unmute ourselves, and the maestro has been waiting to lead us.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.